Hello and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour, a very special edition of Horseplayer Happy Hour. This is our last episode of the regular season. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you, not coming from the Brooklyn Bunker, but from Longshots Bar here at beautiful Aqueduct, New York City's racetrack. And we've been out here all day enjoying the festivities, and this seemed like a pretty good place to do a broadcast. We got the internet seems to be working at the moment. I figure we could share a little bit of atmosphere with you, and I'll be boogieing. We might even go 4 minutes short today on Horseplayer Happy Hour because, yes, that horse running in the 9th race here at Aqueduct today is named for me, looms boldly. My Twitter handle. We'll get to that eventually. But before we get to any of that, we got to bring in the co-host of today's program, coming to us from an undisclosed location in New England. You know him from the fantastic work he does places like TSN, like NBC, and on his own eponymous podcast. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
Good, Pete. Like you said, I'm looking forward to seeing how your namesake ends up running here later on this afternoon. We'll dive into that more. And I asked you before we came on, I said, what races do you want to talk about? Because there's about 40 important ones this weekend. So plenty to unpack over the next hour.
We'll get to that. And we've got a special guest going to be coming to us later. Very popular guest anytime he's on these airwaves. One of the guys who'd likely be on the Mount Rushmore of handicapping authors, Mark Kramer, who lives in Paris these days, frequent guest. He's going to be giving us his high-level thoughts on, is it 4? No, it's 5, I think. Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races Sunday morning from Longchamp. Sunday, there's also Win and You're In stuff in the States. We're going to be covering those races on a special edition of Baby Talk on Sunday. Matt and I will be looking at I think there's just the 4 Saturday Win and You're Ins. We'll get to those. But with only a few minutes to post here at Aqueduct for our third to last contest race of the regular season, I think we should chat about this one. And you said something really interesting to me, Matt, as we were about to come on air, that you're approaching today's contest a little bit differently, maybe trying to sharpen the axe a little bit as far as live bankroll play. Is that the impression I was getting?
Yeah, and maybe this is a good exercise for folks that are going to be playing for the BCBC or playing in it for the first time, or, maybe they're not used to betting large sums of money. I don't typically play crazy exotics. I usually play to win, maybe a double or a multi-race kind of sequence, but I don't usually play exactas or trifectas, which are both very important for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. So, we've got about 5 weeks left, thereabouts. This is as good a time as any to get back into that and sort of work that muscle a little bit, maybe shake some of the rust off. So this race here, I think it's a very good, in a weird way, it's only a field of 8, but I think it's a good kind of comp to a Breeders' Cup race because it's wide open. You can make cases for as many as 4 or 5 of them on the win end. And I think you're going to get some added value in some of those underneath rungs for your exactas and your tries. So I went ahead, I played a bit of a tiered trifecta, keying things around the 1 who was the speed horse in here in Big Everest, and the 7 who was one of Chad's in here in Flopshot. Flopshot, I think, was compromised by a slow pace in that run at Saratoga last out. And I love horses that have proven themselves over Aqueduct's turf course in the past. Flopshot is a perfect 1-for-1 over the surface. So if you look at it from the speed of the race on the inside with Rosario and a Chad horse rallying, hopefully things are a little bit better from a pace dynamic this time around, but has proven himself over the turf course. Those are the 2 that I'm keying everything around with. So I'm going 1-7 with 1-7 with all for $5 in a try. That's $60. 1-7 with all with 1-7 for $3. That's 36. And then all with 1-7 with 1-7 for $1. That's 12. All told, $108. I'm also going to play 1-7 into the 8 in the next race, who I believe is 10-1 on the morning line, $10 doubles each. And again, you're going to end up tiering this. So, this may only sound like a $128 play. Think of it in 5-6 weeks time. This could easily be a minimum for $600, or it could be upwards of $1,000 or even more, depending on where we are.
I love this idea. I think it's something everybody should do before diving into the deep end of the pool in a contest like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Could also be useful just for the Saturday $300 contest that we have right here at NYRA. You can, and I like that idea of make the bet, come up with a structure, try to come up with combinations that really reflect your opinion. And I think this is a really good example, Matt, of exactly how that works, where the way you want it to come the best, you have the most money invested all down the line in terms of savers. And then, if you want it to get even more complicated, you can go back and in where you have those alls in those spots, maybe you come up with a press ticket with horses you like a little bit more. But it sounds to me like you're just, those are more just trying to catch something if your main opinion doesn't end up right. You didn't feel the need to come up with any particular press tickets for those.
No, and honestly, it kind of goes back to 2014, where at Santa Anita on it must have been Friday, the Juvenile Fillies was run, and Take Charge Brandy won, and she was 60-1, something like that. And I had the horses that ran second and third, but I didn't use all in that top leg. And I know maybe that's saying, you didn't like her, why would you use her, kind of thing. But I thought the other two horses were very havable. I believe Top Decil was one of them, and I can't remember who the other horse was. But the idea was it was absolutely havable for me if I had just spread a little bit more. And maybe to me, in an event like the Breeders' Cup, certainly you can press up the opinions. And like you say, maybe rather than use all for one of these other legs, maybe I take two of them and I press them up a little harder and still use the others as backups. But the Breeders' Cup, it's such a deep event, and the races themselves offer so much opportunity to have 20 or 30-1 shots, catch some piece of it, whether it's on top, second, or third, that I'm not opposed to saying, you know what, maybe I'm not playing it for, I'm making it up 10x. Maybe I'm playing it for 5x, but I'm going to catch the horse that is 30-1 in second or third, and that's going to make up for that 5x difference that I didn't press up on. So I'm okay being a bit, I don't know if ambivalent's the right word, but I'm okay not saying I have the strongest opinion in one of those races, because with 14 horses, inherently, there's going to be just so much value to be had. I just want to make sure I have it, as opposed to trying to get too cute.
It makes sense. And that idea of a grade at all, something we talk about a lot with the Matt Vagvolgi and his appearances on our shows. Going to be another show tonight, not our only live stream of the day, 9:00, doing a little Santa Anita meet preview with Matt and Jessica Paquette and Dean Kepler, who's been doing a great job covering Southern California for us. As for this race, in my opinion, I'm with you on your key of number one, Big Everest, who I do think has a chance to get loose. One of the very fun and nice folks hanging out here at the Long Shots Bar today was actually Stephen Rocco, one of the co-owners of the horse, who says the horse is doing well, and for whatever that's worth. But I mean, for me, this is just a pure pace play. Let's share some other comments. That's one of the fun things we do on these shows. Congrats to Howard Kravitz, who's an associate of ours here in the bigger family of In the Money Media, who got the job done with Funny How. I came out here early just to watch Funny How for our friends at Adelphi Racing. Always nice to start the day with a winner. Charles congratulating Howard on that one. And then Charles offering a thought here about the Peter Brandt, Chad Brown runner. 6-1 looks like good value to Charles in this race to start things off. It's an interesting, this is an interesting little race. And I think you make a good point about that Peter Brandt runner as well. Flop shot. Chad also with the 6 runner, Good Governance in here, who had that memorable Saratoga maiden win a few years back. They're all set for a start here, it looks like, getting ready to pop. And I think we'll know our fate with Big Everest pretty soon here. I'm hoping we get a nice clean break and we can just go through there and establish position, though it does look like he's going to have some company on the lead. Not exactly as loose and lonely as I was expecting in this spot, but I still think holding position and doing okay. I like the fact that the jock hasn't moved his hands at all, and he's still now establishing that inside speed position. You got to feel okay about this. How's Flop Shot doing?
Yeah, can't complain. I mean, you figured this horse was going to rally from the back of it. You see the opening quarters, 23 and change. Saves ground every inch of the way. You're going to hope that you come with some kind of a run. And for me, that's, again, sort of philosophical ideas with this is, look, I don't need to be absolutely right in order to hit this thing. I need to be 2/3 right, honestly, if we're just calling a spade a spade. I just need to have 2 of them hit the board and then let whatever else happens happen. So if Big Everest has enough in reserve, didn't even need to win this thing. Just be out there, be in a decent position, and then have Flop Shot come with his run, even if he doesn't win. Just give me a piece of this thing, and then let's see what else happens. But and I'm sure some people would disagree with that idea, the way that I've laid it out, that it's not, decisive enough about emphasizing your opinion. But again, in an instance like this or in a Breeders' Cup race, I just want to have a piece of it.
Well, it's working out beautifully for Big Everest, who is going on with it here in the lane. We do have a big run from Good Governance, it looks like, coming in behind. And Flopshot's picking up very, very late, maybe too late. We'll see if anything magic can happen there. But now it looks like this one's going to be 1-6-3-7. You were all around it with that idea, Matt. Just couldn't quite. I guess one could say you had the wrong Chad Brown horse come in and make that run for second. But it's just one of those things, and one you just have to let go by the boards.
Yeah, and maybe it is an instance where I got a little bit too cute comparing the two. Good Governance, if I'm being honest, I've just never really been a fan of his. I think he's fine, but he is what you just saw. I mean, that's kind of what he is. He's a low 90 kind of buyer horse. He always gets bet. I mean, he's never been higher than 5-2 in his career, and that was in his first start. I mean, he's just not my kind of horse. This is the actual longest he's ever gone off at 3.5-1. So, I like the idea. I like the philosophy. I got a run. Just couldn't quite kick on at the end. But that right there, those prices that you see, that's kind of the gist that I was trying to get to, that you got 5-2 over 7-2, which doesn't sound great, but that 10-1 shot in third, that spices some things up. And again, if we're multiplying this, what I've played it by 10 for the Breeders' Cup on Friday or Saturday down at Keeneland, even this try, let's say it comes back, I don't know. What do you think? $70, $65? Maybe with the 10-1 shot.
Yeah, that sounds realistic. Yeah, that's definitely realistic.
So if that's for $1 and you've played it all told for, 25 or 30, I mean, that's not a bad start. Especially you're not looking to hit the home run. At least I wasn't with this race. It was just, let's try to get something to play with going forward. I mean, I think you could do much worse than that if you end up connecting, especially early on Friday, to play with something the rest of the way.
When you do this exercise of trying to play it like it's a live bankroll contest, do you have a goal? Do you pretend there's a leaderboard and you need to get 10x of your money or anything like that? I think that would be a useful, constructing the bets and getting used to doing that. Super important on its own, but I think that might get it to another level of helpfulness potentially if you start thinking strategically in terms of, okay, here's where I'm going to make my stand. Here's where I'm willing to bottom out, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, when I first started doing these sort of things, especially when I wasn't playing any live money contests back when we were doing the Horseplayers show, I would sort of set a number like, okay, how do we get to this number and kind of reverse engineer it? I think the problem for me anyway with the BCBC, we've talked about it in recent years, the final numbers are so huge that, I mean, I don't even know what the scenario is for me to sit there and say, what's a reasonable, I mean, you would know as well as anyone. What do you think a winning total is? I mean, it could be anywhere between, I could see 80,000 and 200,000. I mean, it's just so hard to narrow that down.
If your winner go bust, yeah, you need to be thinking about, I don't know, 125, 140, I think as a minimum. But remember, and this is an important thing for a lot of the people listening and who are going to be playing in the contest, even though from a strict expected value point of view, win or bust is an attitude that makes a lot of sense. This is a wonderful place to just bet the money you were going to bet and participate in that prize pool, even if it's down at the lower rungs. I mean, for me, if somebody was super serious about getting an NHC seat, say, yeah, there's some wonderful opportunities at places like Lone Star and Hawthorne where the NHC seats are just added to the prize pool and you got a real good chance at going after them. But I don't think it's nuts to try to win a BCBC seat and turn that into, I mean, I'd have to look at what it's been the last few years, but I got to think 20,000, maybe less, gives you a good chance, and there you're only talking about, whatever, 3x of your starting bankroll. I think, though, to get a feel for it, looking at some number like 10x of your starting bankroll is just good to start flexing the muscles of having a goal and setting a path to get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still maintain that's a good, especially in the mythical $2 win place contests. I feel like you need to have some sort of an idea, depending on how many races there are throughout the day. Let's just say it's a 10 race contest. You effectively have $40 to play with if you break it down your $2 win place bets. I think you at least, to have a true chance of winning, you probably need 3x that. You probably need to get into the 120 range, if not more. Some instances it'll be less than that. Sometimes it'll be more than that. But I think a sort of 120 number is a good target for those sort of contests. And then that's how you can, I think it's easier to go back that way and say, okay, how do I get there as opposed to a live money event? Because there's so much that can happen in a live money event that I don't want to say is unforeseen, but it's just hard for you to project what somebody else is going to do.
There's
At
a lot
least
of
with,
variables.
at least with the mythical contest, you kind of know they're going to cap out at most at $64 in any given race. How many cappers are going to be in a 10 race sequence? I mean, I think it's a little bit easier to sort of figure that piece out. I will say, the try for $1 comes back 109, 110, somewhere
Terrific.
thereabouts. So, I mean, again, if you play, and that's my only point with kind of going at it this way. And for what it's worth, also, I didn't have the trifecta, but I had mentioned I played two $10 doubles with the 1 and the 7, the two horses that I keyed in the tries, into the 8 horse in here. So that right now would come back, $540 for a buck, or excuse me, for $10. So I mean, there's more than one way to cook a steak. You can do it so many different ways, and I think it's just, for me, it's a matter of let's shake the cobwebs out a little bit.
I like the sound of it. Howard participated in that. That's good stuff. Tom points out that Matt Miller's winning strategy last year was predicated on that idea. Can't remember what the exact number was that he got to, but just coming up with a total and shooting for it. We have some other specific questions. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the Sunday win in your in stuff yet, but we're going to be talking about the Saturday win in your in races. But let's just give a quick overview and get to some leaderboards. Of course, this is Horseplayer Happy Hour, this interconnected series through this week of $20 contests. I won't put in a big pitch because if you haven't, this is the last one of the regular season contest. The good news is we will be having regular qualifiers for the next, I guess it's 4 weeks of Horseplayer Happy Hour. So, and you can try to feed into those during the week. I think we're going to have feeders for those. You don't necessarily have to put up the 180. But the great thing about those is we'll be sending more people to the Breeders' Cup out of this show, which we love. And I also love the fact that because of the higher price point, we're generating a lot more money for charity. A very respectable number, about 160 people playing in our final week. Playoffs begin next week. Within a day or so of today's contest, we'll have a fully vetted leaderboard. We'll know the 80 players who will be participating. First week of the playoffs, 80 go down to 40, then 40 go down to 20, 20 go down to 10, and we close off with that final table of 10. Really excited about having this play out. And again, I already mentioned the key point. I think that this is a way to make a donation essentially to Thoroughbred Aftercare, because the house cut from all these games all year goes to our friends at the TAA, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, who do the critical job of accrediting these charities, and our friends and founding partners at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, who do such a great job helping humans and horses through their Second Chances program. So always want to get those basic facts out there. And Matt, if maybe this is a good time to kick it to Mark and get some Parisian thoughts, unless you had anything you wanted to chime in about the playoffs, or you know what, we'll do the leaderboards real quick, and then we'll do it. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, let's take a look and see. This is the final chance for those of you that haven't qualified for the playoffs yet to get in. And it looks like the top of the leaderboard, we still, with 2 races left, I would say you still have every chance going all the way down into probably just outside the top 10.
That sounds about right. Michael Elias, who's a name I've seen too many times to pronounce that badly. Apologies, Michael. 8870 right now. Christopher Olson, Leonard Dodson. Christopher Olson again, trying to make a nice run there, get some tour points. John Paccioni, Christopher Olson, 3 up there. What did Christopher Olson do with his last 2 entries, Craig? Are they the same? He's got 7-2, he's got 7-4, and he's got 7-9. So one the same and one hedged. Looking to get up into the exacta and get that ticket punched for the playoffs. William Smith, John Gasper with playing the same at 55, and he's the same, the 211 the rest of the way. Michael Echatulo, Stephen Meyer, David Browning, 2 from Dave Nichols, played the same the rest of the way out. Brian Sullivan and Todd Van Dree. Lots of familiar names, people who've supported us all year long. I do think it's probably smart, especially if you were somebody who had an opportunity to try. The only way you're going to catch Greg Kingman now is if you go run, if you're already pretty high up and you go runner with, that idea. If I were chasing him, if I were Michael Cavana, play the same entries and hope you run 1-2. That would have been your chance. Greg Kingman looking very, very good to win a BCBC seat here with his 490 points atop the Tour leaderboard. I'll just read out the top 10 real quick. Michael Cavanis, Stephen McNatton, Ernest Hay Jr., Howard Johnson, Togo Travaglia, Matthew Abbott, Dylan Donnelly, Michael Domable, John Ball III, Dave Nichols, and Kurt Rockwell. So some jockeying for position there. We'll see what happens. Certainly in an extremely good position is Greg Kingma to get that BC seat, join Matt and all the other players, and many, hopefully some other people listening who are going to keep playing in these qualifiers and get a chance to be there in what we both consider the best handicapping contest of the year, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Breeders' Cup Win and You're In action coming up this weekend. We're going to have more on the domestic side of things a little bit later in the show. But now let's hear from my chat this morning with handicapping author Mark Kramer.
On the show, we bring in one of our foreign correspondents, a man whose appearances on these airwaves are always marked from regular viewers and listeners by comments like, "You should have Mark Kramer on more often." And that's the man we welcome to the airwaves now, the legendary handicapping author and horse player, Mark Kramer. Mark, how are things?
Well, good to be here, but legend, I'm not sure about that. That sounds like I'm over 100 years old and vanished to the other world.
All right, we'll come up with a better adjective in
right.
future. But I know when people talk about the way that they get into racing, just the other day, I had somebody put you up there on the Mount Rushmore. He said, I read all the books, and the names that come after that are Chris, Davidowitz, Beyer, and Kramer very often. So it's pretty heady company for you to be in, my friend. These days, for folks that don't know, you live over in Paris. You follow that racing very closely. And when it comes to this spate of Win and You're In races at Paris de Longchamp on Sunday, there was nobody I wanted to have on more than you to give your thoughts on these races. And why don't we start off with the Prix de l'Opera? This is going to be on Sunday. Win and You're In action at Longchamp for the Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf. Give me some high-level thoughts on this race, my friend.
Well, first of all, two big trainers, Andre Fabre and Gosden, are 0 for 20 in their last tries in this race. And it so happens that Gosden has the favorite in Nashua, the heavy favorite, 6 races, 4 wins, and 2 shows. So I would say that Nashua could be vulnerable here. And the horse that I'm really interested in, and you can all watch this, the replay of the French Oaks, La Parisienne, listed at 8-1. La Parisienne lost by 1 short neck to the favorite Nashua in that race. And you watch that race, he'll be the jockey's wearing a dark green, breaks, he's squeezed out at the beginning of the race. And then no room throughout. He moves up, but then he can't get through. He loses by a short neck to the favorite. So if you're having a favorite who's 7-5 and you're having La Parisienne at 8-1, then this looks like a value in the race. So that's my. I mean, there are a lot of great horses, great fillies and mares in this race, but that's the one that I'm looking at.
That's one of our favorite angles. We talk about all the time in turf racing, how the margins, sometimes you'll see close-up margins at the finish that then next time in the betting, they don't get reflected in the odds. And all the better when you have a trip angle like the one you just put forth on La Parisienne. We'll see if she can get the job done in the Prix de l'Opera for us on Sunday. That seems like a good one to bet today. And this is a race that does have links with the Breeders' Cup historically. Do you figure either of these favorites might be willing to make the journey, rather, either of these horses we discussed, should they get the job done on Sunday?
Well, I think that they would both be tempted. I don't see why not. There's no reason why they wouldn't go.
Let's move on to some 2-year-old action. And these races, always hard to do from a few days out, but I know you did have some thoughts. We'll start off with the Qatar Prix Marcel Boussac Win and You're In action for the juvenile fillies turf.
Well, I can save some time for all your viewers and listeners. You don't have to pay attention to this race because the last 12 editions, the winner of the Prix Marcel Boussac has lost his next race. So this is not a prep race for something in the future. I think this is their big thing, and then they sort of drift away.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. We'll see if that comes to bear. We know how this goes with stats. Sometimes always great to try to find some signal, but past performance not always a guarantee of future results. But yeah, the Boussac Nana race, Mark, particularly interested in as a prep for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. How about the companion race on the Colts side? We have the Qatar Prix Jean-Luc Lagardère for the Juvenile Turf win in your inaction. Any more optimistic about the form of this one?
Well, I think we should all check the results and the winner of this race. See, the Boussac, the previous one, is at a mile. And that's not a great prep for Euro horses. Euro horses need to have speed to compete against the Americans. The Lagardère is 7 furlongs. So that means they'll be stretching out when they come to the USA. And that's a good sign. So I would say that the winner of this race, who I have no idea who it's going to be, but this could be a horse to watch for sure.
Definitely a race we're going to have our eye on going forward, the Lagardère. I got to work on my French pronunciation. You can, off air sometime, you can coach me on that. Let's move on, though, to more Breeders' Cup winning you're in action. This time, winning you're in for the turf sprint in the form of the Prix de l'Abbé de Longchamp Longines on Sunday. What do you think about this race this year? What do you think about the chances of one of these competitors going forward on the first Saturday in November?
Well, win if you're in is not necessarily the way to follow this one, because this is generally a chaos race. And very often the winner happens to be the luckiest horse. It's on the straightaway, it's 5 furlongs. All right. So there are 3 horses that I would watch in this race. A Case for You was the winner last year, and to have a horse repeat in a race like this, that would mean that this horse is really live for the Breeders' Cup. Another horse to watch is Platinum Queen, although this is a favorite. The horse has 6 races, 3 firsts and 2 seconds, and he'll be very low odds on Sunday, but could be a good play coming back to the States. And then there's one other horse, Bernier, or however you want to say it. I'm trying to say it so you can recognize. BERN it begins with. 14 races, 4 wins, 4 places, and 5-1. But the interesting thing for Bernier is that he has 5 races over this course, this distance, 2 wins and 2 places. So there's an eye in the money in a field that's usually 20 horses. Get this one in the money, he'll pay good.
That's interesting. A Case of You, couple of things there. I mean, you'd think they might come back for a return tilt after trying Breeders' Cup last year, and of course a great hunch play for all the Joni Mitchell fans out there. Mark, I can only assume you're a fan.
Yeah, I am.
I mean, you got an LA Dodgers cap on. You got to
Right.
figure there's some California, and you know, knowing you're a music lover, you know, I think of you more as jazz than rock and roll. But Joni kind of straddles that line as well.
Oh, she straddles, absolutely, and I love the ones that can go back and forth between the two.
Huge
fact,
race.
She's on our Herbie Hancock album as well. So
So that establishes those jazz bona fides too. One of the biggest races in the world happening on Sunday. It is the Qatar Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. In no one's mind is this race really a prep race, in the sense that it's much more often the target for European trainers and owners all year. But that said, there are close links between the Arc and the Breeders' Cup turf. We've seen a runner like an Abel, Annex both. We've seen plenty of runners who were also rans in the Arc come over and do well in the Breeders' Cup turf. To talk about this year's running, we bring in one of the most famed handicapping authors of all time, Mark Kramer, also a Parisian resident who follows the circuit very closely. What are the storylines we should be following in this year's Arc?
Well, I have a personal storyline with the ARC because, as you say, that it's not a prep race for anybody except for me, because very frequently the horse that I pick in the ARC loses and then comes back to win the next time. So that could be interesting for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Horse that is interesting here. Now there's several horses whose daddy is Frankel, and that's dangerous. This Frankel has been producing so many big winners lately. Okay, the horse that I'm interested in, there are two favorites. Two of the three favorites, Vadeni and Luxembourg, have never gone the distance of 1.5 miles. So that means that maybe we can get some good odds on another horse. Another one of the horses being played at the moment, 5-1 in the futures, Alpinista. Now, Alpinista means mountain climbing, and I like mountain climbing, but so that may be I may be affecting my psychology. I'm going to root for this because the trainer Prescott is 74 years old. So I would love to see a 74-year-old trainer win a race like this. Alpinista has defeated 4 other horses who are in the same race. Now, that said, this is an incredibly contentious field. And people who say Baid did not go into this race, so it's not as good as it should be. Well, I think Baid actually fled from this race because he would have had to race an extra 1.5 furlongs. And in his previous victory at a lot of these good horses just did not want to go against Baid. They said, let me get easier race. So he didn't have much to beat in that race. So he's not here, and I don't care. So now I have the last year's winner, Torquato Tasso. It's been raining a lot, and that horse, I actually mentioned him on Facebook last year. After I had another horse that I liked, I said, wait a second, it's raining a lot here. Better watch this horse. And it's been raining a lot now, so he could come back and win again for the second time. He's been defeated by Alpinista, by the way, in Germany. All right. Then you always have to worry about anything Andre Fabre puts in this race for in the money. I don't think Mare Australis will win for the 19 post. It's number 3 horse, 19 post. But Fabre's there, and got to watch out for him getting long shots in the money. Japanese have a lot of horses here, including Title Holder. And, you know, their problem with the ARC is that it's usually a soft ground, and they don't get soft grounds in their racing. But Title Holder, you got to give him a good chance. I have one long shot among several, but there's the one that looks the most intriguing is the second Gosden horse. Okay, and not Mishriff, who I don't think will I think he'll putz out at the distance. But Mostadaf will be ridden by Crowley, Gosden horse, sired by Frankel. And you have to look carefully at the past performance. You can get them at Racing Post, by the way, good past performances online. And this horse had a huge break in his racing after showing so much talent early. So you got to think that the horse had some sort of trouble, physical trouble. He's been brought back gently, except for one big mistake they made of running him back 3 weeks after the previous race. Then they atoned for that mistake. He won a prep race at a lesser race. So I think that this horse is at the right moment, at the right time in his career with a trainer who has been really looking for this race. So even though this is the second Gosden horse, this is, I think he's a long shot chance. And there's another Frankel horse in there called Onesto. So, Frankel could be the answer to figuring out this race.
It's going to be interesting. A lot of competing storylines. Definitely going to be some Breeders' Cup tie-ins here as well. Mishriff supposedly going to be coming over to contest, we think, the Breeders' Cup turf at this point. Mark, we'll have you on again to talk of Breeders' Cup in a few weeks as part of some of our programming on the In the Money Media Network. Thank you so much.
Just mention one other thing. I'm not even going to mention my book, name of book or anything like that. I'm not going to do a show and tell. But people who are interested in anything I've written or other books that are interesting, you can go to Lazy Better USA. That's Roger LeBlanc's website. And Lazy Better USA, the advantage there is that you don't pay shipping.
That's very good.
Shipping is an onerous charge that we have to deal with, and I don't sign up for any freebies on that because you pay back afterwards. So that's what I'd recommend. Take a look at my stuff.
Lazy Better USA, the most recent re-released book. Please hold all tickets. It's a great one. If you like that, you can go back and find our chat from when it was re-released. Mark, we'll have you back on these airwaves soon.
Good stuff. Always fun to catch up with Mark. Some good ideas there. Matt has some good ideas about this upcoming race right here at Belmont at the Big A, Aqueduct, where I sit currently in the Long Shots bar on the second floor. Great spot to watch races. Excited to come back here actually for a Saturday or Sunday with all these TVs. Excellent opportunity to watch a little bit of football as well while you bet horses. Matt, remind us who you liked here and make us the case. Remind us what you're alive to.
Yeah, I'm alive to the 8, Affable Monarch in here. On Figs, definitely on the slower side, but comes out of a race at Monmouth where there was no speed to run at. I look at this field and think most of these horses want to be forwardly placed, and not many of them have really proven that they can pass horses. So, yes, need to step up. There's a reason the horse is 7-1 right now, but I think should get a good race shape. And then on top of that, I played a number of trifectas with this one underneath. I also have this one on top, but it's more, I don't want to call it a saver, but in case we can't quite get there, but we come running on, I still want to be able to cash something. I've got the logical runners in there, the couple of Todd horses, as well as Chad, who's the favorite right now at 2-1. But for me, it's the 8 in here, Affable Monarch.
I love the horse too. And it's another, the pace angle worked the last race. Maybe it'll work here too. Race with plenty of speed signed on, and this one with some strong late closing sectionals. And I really like that idea of using the vertical pools as a hedge on the horizontal pools, something we've talked about before. It's something that Mike Maloney does very, very cleverly and writes about in his book, speaking of handicapping authors. So I like that approach. And I also like that you're not strictly using it as a hedge and also trying to get a little bit more if your top pick in this race can get the job done. We have a minute or two. We've got some great questions. Howard chimed in asking us about Forbidden Kingdom. If folks remember, this was a horse that at one point was the Derby favorite. Turned out it didn't really seem like he wanted to stretch out and, bombed going long trip to the sidelines back in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. This wasn't a race, Matt, that I'd put on our docket to necessarily talk about on this show, but have you had a chance to take a look? I mean, Forbidden Kingdom looks to be training well. If he runs his race based on the numbers and you bake in some improvement for age, a likely favorite in this spot and could be a very, very tough customer. Did you have a chance to have a look?
I did a quick once over just because I'm looking at some other races to try to write for the weekend. I mean, it has whiffs of Omaha Beach, doesn't it? He was the favorite for the Derby. He got hurt. They come back in this spot where you look at it and you go, boy, this is too sharp. He goes out and runs a hole in the wind, and then they come back and he's narrowly defeated in the dirt mile. I would assume that's a very comparable or similar kind of layout. If he runs really well on Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him in a race like the dirt mile.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how Howard is going to be crossed off of Life is Good's holiday card list, I think, calling Forbidden Kingdom the most interesting horse running this weekend. But I take his point. I mean, this horse is nothing but upside, and we've seen this movie before. And when a trainer like Richard Mandela does something, I think of him more as somebody who's going to give a prep and this and that. And when he brings him back like this in the deep end of the pool, so to speak, he's doing it with some serious intent. So not a horse I would be leaving out of too much is this one. We will get to some rapid fire on the we'll get to some rapid fire action on the win and you're in action from New York. I do want to try to get to the paddock for this next race at Aqueduct. So we might go off air a minute or two early, but we'll see how it. We'll see if we can have our cake and eat it too. Here's one of the horses we'll be talking about that Wayne brings up. Actually, Be Your Best is a potential bet for the Juvenile Fillies Turf. We'll put a pin in that one, and we'll come back to it when we talk about the Miss Grillo, one of the win and you're in races here on Saturday. And then Wayne asks about the Juvenile Turf. Yeah, he mentions Prank. Prank has not worked since, so clearly a setback there. She looked like a favorite for the Juvenile Fillies. I'll say, I mean, my general thought on the Juvenile Fillies from this far out, Matt, is don't bother having an opinion because so much can change in these next round of preps. I mean, is there anything that you're leaning on this far out for a race like that, or is it all wait and see for you?
No, especially with the girls right now, I don't have any real. If I'm being honest, there's not one filly right now that kind of sticks out in my head as like, oh, she's one that I could really see myself getting stuck into. I will say this weekend, and we'll talk about the Champagne. The most important horse this weekend is not running in New York, but he could very easily be flattered or Tyler's Tribe runs again Saturday night at Prairie Meadows. We've talked about it. I tweeted about it after his first start. You have no idea with a horse like that. He could end up being nothing, or he could end up being a superstar. It's never been close. And there's a horse in the Champagne that we'll talk about that I think has a big chance. And he got humbled by this horse. So we'll wait and see. But Tyler's Tribe to me is the one. You want to talk about the most interesting horse this weekend? It's him.
I mean, the figures are good. Obviously, now that we've had some of these bears posting some fairly monstrous numbers, no longer the case. But for a minute there, he was running the fastest figures of any 2-year-old. Turning in here at Saratoga, and your runner, Matt, is trying like crazy. The rail hasn't looked great to me today, and that might end up being this one's undoing. Meanwhile, the 4 seizing control of things. Your 8 finally on the right part of the track here, and I think is going to come on running and be second. Does this do anything for you for the try?
I don't believe so. I don't think I have this one on top. And again, that's the danger of getting too, mixed match. But at the same time, I didn't love the horse. I kind of feel like if you give my horse that outside trip, we're probably in with a chance. And it is what it is. I mean, again, you have nothing to show for it, but you look at it and say, I think the analysis of the race was right. You had a bunch of horses that wanted to go. None of them have proven they can pass each other. Kind of fell apart. We came running on. Just found one better, and maybe we were kind of victimized by the racetrack.
Yeah, I feel like you spent too much time down on that rail, which did not look earlier in the day like the place to be in these dirt races. Let's do a little rapid fire, Matt, like 2 minutes a race kind of thing on these win and you're in races. I think my goal, let's production meet in the middle of the show here. So race 9 at Aqueduct, it says 5:13. So if we can get out of here in 10 minutes, I can still get down to the paddock. So I think that's what we're going to try to do. And that gives us just enough time to do 2 minutes per race. And let's start off with the Miss Grillo, the race we had a question about with Be Your Best, win and you're in action for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. I was going to take a look and try number 2 Free Look to reverse form with Be Your Best. I thought that Free Look improved a whole lot second time out, and I just think she's going to be in a great spot in here, enough speed to be in a good position, and I just really like how she's finished up in both of her starts. Very progressive, and I think could just get the jump on the favorite. The favorite looked like the other horse. I was very uncreative in here, but I did I did think that Free Look will not be the favorite, and I was going to make my top pick. What did you think about the Miss Grillo?
Free Look on top for me. No disrespect to Be Your Best. I think she's really talented. I like that she's done a couple different things in her 2 starts, and she defeated Free Look. But I thought Free Look, in the debut, a little bit weird early on, in behind horses, a little bit keyed up, and then was extremely wide, a bit green, finished well. And that most recent run, I know the pace was wicked, but looked like a good thing to the point where, with a good effort on Saturday, wouldn't rule this one out as far as the Juvenile Fillies Turf is concerned. I guess if you're throwing anyone else out there, I know the race hasn't come back very good, but Pleasant Passage, that was a really, really tough trip down on the inside. And I say tough, saved every inch of ground, but was in a very, very tight spot. And for a first-time starter for Shug, for her to be able to not just hang in there, but then punch through, I thought that spoke volumes. I don't know if she's good enough to win, but I could see her kicking on.
Let's move on to the Champagne, race number 10 at Belmont at Aqueduct on Saturday. And I thought that Blazing Sevens, number 5, was a bit interesting. Has an angle I like in these 2-year-old stakes races where he's shown that he can pass horses. Very wide the last day. Maybe didn't love the slop just visually. Looked to have more under the hood on debut for sure. Feels like distance will be okay. The dam won routing. And Good Magic, a sire who I think we're expecting to stretch out okay. So far, only one of the Good Magics has tried to route on the dirt. That was Curly Jack, and he won the Iroquois. That's a softer reason to like this horse. I just think this is one that should be a price in a race where a whole lot of horses want to go to the lead. How do you see the Champagne?
I'm going with Top Recruit. We talked a little bit about Tyler's Tribe. The only time this horse has lost, he got humbled by Tyler's Tribe in that Prairie Golden Juvenile or whatever it's called. I think this horse ran really well in that most recent run in the Ellis Park Juvenile. Only part of the pace around late. You brought up Curly Jack. He came back and won next out. The 4th place finisher was the next out winner with an 85 buyer. You're right. Probably part of the pace early on, and that could be to his undoing. But I just think Top Recruit's interesting. You pick up Irad Ortiz 5-1, a horse that won't be the first or second choice that I think has every right to get the job done compared to the others. I'll go with Top Recruit.
Churchill's 9th race is the Ack, where we've got more Breeders' Cup win and you're in action. We've got a big favorite here in the form of number 1, Speaker's Corner. Feels like a very good situation to bounce back with the expected pace and presumably being able to dominate. The last work probably signals readiness as well. But I'm going to make my pick a long shot in this spot, even though in all my betting, there'll be plenty of Speaker's Corner. I'm intrigued by number 5, 3 Technique, as a horse who I just think could be overpriced. Coming out of a fast race that produced a freaky good-looking winner last time in Cody's Wish. I don't think the pace scenario on paper looks like it should be great, and it could just end up being a procession for the favorite. But this horse just looks too big if he's going to be 8, 10, 12-1. What did you think of the Ack?
I agree with you about the pace. I mean, it's a shame that there isn't more signed on, but because every part of my being says Speaker's Corner anywhere close to even money is a terrible, terrible bet because he's just going the wrong way. And maybe he got his heart ripped out by Flightline, but I can't possibly recommend this horse. I wouldn't recommend him at 2-1, never mind even money. And he may end up odds on. Maybe he's not good enough. I think Senor Buscador is coming into this in sneaky good form. He was extremely wide in the Pat O'Brien. Say what you will about that race, but the 5th place finisher, I believe it was, the Chosen Vron, he came back and won next out at Los Al. He's the only horse to run back out of the Pat O'Brien. But with a slow pace and a wide trip, I thought Senor Buscador ran really well, and I think this is his trip. I think he's a 1-turn, 7/8, 1-turn miler, and he's not going to be among the favorites. He's 12-1 on the line. I would imagine you're probably somewhere in that 8 or 9-1 range when all is said and done. I think he's got a big chance.
One more Speaker's Corner question for you before we move on. Do you think he's the most likely winner?
Oh, man.
Because that's why I couldn't I know what you're saying. He's a horse you're supposed to bet against, but for some horizontals, I don't know. This was just an instance where I was going to feel too bad because it had so many of the ingredients of a bounce back spot, even though you're absolutely right that the even money makes my teeth itch.
I'll tell you what, on Figs, he is absolutely the most likely winner. I think, despite the fact that he's never run overly fast, I think Folsom might be the most likely winner for Cox and Giroux and Juddmonte. The numbers would suggest otherwise. And I'm not going to talk you off of Speaker's Corner is the fastest on paper, and he is the controlling speed. He has all the makings to be the most likely winner. But boy, just at such a short number, I don't know. Honestly, I'd be trying to fade him entirely just because I don't think there's going to be any kind of value in there. I think if anything, people are going to go overboard on him for the reasons we've talked about. And I just see a horse that is going the wrong direction.
I get it. I just wish if he had an obvious pace rival, I'd be all about team take him on, but that's why I want to keep him on side, even though I'm not making him my top pick for obvious reasons. One more race to talk about on the show, Win and You're In Wise. It is the Grade 1 Awesome Again. We're going 1 mile and an 1/8 at the Great Race Place, Santa Anita. So happy to have them back. We'll put in another plug. We're going to go into all these Santa Anita races on our live stream tonight. That's 9 o'clock. Come back and join us. 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific for that one. Country Grammar just stood out to me. I mean, I hate being so uncreative, but and I do think of him as more of a 10 furlong horse, but it's also probably true that he was just a little bit short for the San Diego really no shame in the Pacific Classic, given the tour de force performance that we saw in there. I thought this was a case of the old fastest horse who should get the best trip this time around. I kept it simple with Country Grammar. You have anything more creative for us there?
No, I mean, to me, if you took Flightline out of training, I mean, I still think Country Grammar might be the most likely winner of the Classic. I mean, he has done nothing wrong at 1.25 miles. His figs are all there. I believe the buyers in each of the last two are light. I think he should be about 10 points higher for the P Classic and somewhere in that 5 range for the San Diego, which was nothing more than a means to an end. Yeah, I think Country Grammar is far and away the most likely winner. Royal Ship, I love him. I don't trust him as far as you could throw him. I have no idea which version is going to show up. The good one can certainly win. And then I guess the only other one to throw out there, again, we're not talking about prices, but Express Train, on his best day, he's at least comparable to some of those other horses. It's just, I've never been overly wowed by him. I think he's a nice horse and just a nice horse at that. But if Country Grammar runs his race, he should win.
We'll wrap it up with a couple other comments and questions. Rob Calbo wants to know if the playoff rounds are going to be Thursdays as well. Yes, they are. And Matt, you and I will have a production meeting outside the show. We should talk about what we want those cards to look like, because we won't have Keeneland net yet next week. I don't know. We'll look at the weather. We'll have to make some decisions about what we want those cards to look like. But they will definitely be on Thursdays, and our live stream will be 4 to 5. Reminder: we're going to have qualifiers going on at the same time. Horseplayers.com. Go and look, see if you can find feeders into those qualifiers. We'll talk to the team about getting those put up. I love the idea that somebody could still put up $20 and get a chance to compete for a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat, only doing it on Thursday with us as well. We had another vote for La Parisienne in the comments here from Kimbo. Let's see who else we have in here. Oh, I feel bad, Howard. I wish I'd seen this before the race. He had mentioned Unbridled Bomber as who obviously that's source that won, right? That's the closer that got the perfect setup. So nice shout, and he put up a wager here too that was successful. Howard having a very good day, so we'll give him the boom. You win a race, you give out a couple of winning wagers. Great stuff. Wayne chiming in. Wayne, Godspeed to you. Charles giving props to Howard as well. And Tom, summing it up, already looking forward to next season. But hey, don't give up yet. Get involved in these playoffs, Tom, and play in these qualifiers or feed into these qualifiers. It's going to be a fantastic next few weeks. Really, the regular season may be ending, but the fun is just getting started on Horseplayer Happy Hour. Any closing thoughts from you, Matt, before we wind this one up?
Yeah, the closing thoughts, and this is going to be my sign-off, but you got to tell us, what's the deal? What are we expecting from the horse first out?
Well, I'll tell you what, the female family for Looms Boldly, they all won second out. And when I interviewed Brad Cox the other day about this horse, he did say he felt, he said in that coded trainer speak way, he said the horse was maybe carrying a little bit of extra flesh. I said, well, he takes after the guy he was named after. He is as cold as you can be for a Brad Cox firster with that kind of quality on the female side on the board. 15-1. I'm going to bet a little bit because why not? But I think this is a horse. I just want to see something. I want to see some effort from the namesake, and we'll probably bet him next time. With more enthusiasm. Does that make any sense?
I was going to say he's only cold, or she's only cold on the board because you haven't bet yet. then once you make that bet and she comes down to 5-1, people are going to say, "Oh, she's ready to go."
The $4 Natal dollars have not come down on this New York bred colt. Look, if you believe in pedigree, you're excited about this one, and I'm glad to give the chance to give a nice shout out to Marshall and Clay and the whole team at 10 Strike. What a cool honor to have one named after me. I mean, these are connections that owe me less than nothing, right? I mean, they basically let me in for a song on Long On Value, who ended up being a grade 1 winner for us, and they have been supporters of this show and the In the Money Players podcast and our whole network right from the get-go. So, you can't thank those guys enough. And yeah, we'll see how this one does. And no matter what happens, it's just a thrill to be out here and get this one to the races. So great stuff, Matt. Thank you for asking that question. And I'm getting ready to head down to the paddock here, and I'll see you next week. So with that in mind, we'll thank producer Craig, and we'll thank our friends at Breeders' Cup, especially Haley and Justin, but really everybody over there, the team at horseplayers.com. who do such a great job. Go on that website and make sure that you play and try to qualify for our games next week and see their full array of Breeders' Cup qualifiers as well. Get a
I think
Aqueduct
this is
here, a
where
little
we're
bit
gonna-
different color scheme. I might as well, if I'm not cutting out, I might as well keep it for another minute. But no, in all seriousness, really appreciate the support all regular season from all the peeps, and we're going to keep it rocking and rolling for as much as we can and all the way through the Breeders' Cup. Hope to see folks later, 9 p.m. for that live stream as well. And check us out, Matt Bernier Show, In the Money Players Podcast on the In the Money Media Network. This show's been a production of Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.